All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. So first off, welcome back. Hope everyone had great holidays and a happy new year to everyone. Today we're going to be talking about ExactApply. Now, kind of an in-depth subject because there's a lot of different directions we can go. But ultimately, kind of want to start out with the basics, and over the course of the next 3 months, I want to both go through some basic things about nozzle anatomy and how to configure systems, set them up, basically be able to get these sprayers from the shop, put nozzles on, get them out to the field, and get them ready to go. All with the intention that, before spring, we've sold a lot of sprayers going into 2021 here. Making sure everybody's really comfortable with how these machines work, how they operate, so we can help manage customer expectations and then also help them get the most out of their machines. Now, with all that being said, not everybody has to be an expert on it. Part of what I want you to leave with also is if you have questions, where can you go for resources or who can you call and those sorts of things. So appreciate you hopping on today. So we'll go ahead and just dive right in. So first off, when we talk about ExactApply, there's really four key features that we talk about. The main thing being kind of I guess the operation modes would be the best way to describe it. So there's auto select AB, which is basically conventional spraying, letting the sprayer decide which nozzle is the best to use. So there's 6 nozzles on an ExactApply nozzle body, and we'll look at that here in a little bit. And the sprayer, based on the pressure thresholds and the nozzle types you're using and the speed that you're running, can automatically switch from one nozzle to another or run both at the same time. Now, this is a industry exclusive thing. Nobody else in the industry is doing this today to the level that John Deere is. Now, Pentair and Hypro, they've got a duo select system, which does something similar, but does not have all the features that Deere is running specifically. And they've been working together on both systems. But Case, Agco, they're all running essentially a Raven built system today. So for the past several years, if you look at like a Case sprayer that's got Aim Command or Aim Command Flex, that is more than likely built by Raven. Be the same as their Hawkeye system. So anyway, auto select AB. Other main feature we talk about, and the rest of these are going to be a little more consistent with what other competitors offer in the market. So turn compensation, allowing the nozzles to keep consistent flow across the entire boom when we go through turns. So obviously we've got it on planters with ExactEmerge or ME5E. Sprayers doing the same thing. If you think about a 90, 100, 120, or 132 foot boom, if the machine's going 6 to 8 miles per hour and you take a tight turn, the outside of that boom could be going 20 plus miles per hour. So having the flow on the left outside when you make a right turn versus the inside where the boom might be going backwards can lead to over or under application. And then also combined with the next bullet point, the individual nozzle control. If that boom starts going backwards, we can actually shut individual nozzles off. So think of it like section control right down to the individual nozzle body. So if I've got 15-inch or 20-inch nozzle spacing, uh, allowing that sprayer to individually shut off each specific nozzle body, so my overlap is really minimized down about as low as we can get it with how sprayers are configured today, which is where we see the majority of our savings, the best control when it comes to not over applying, so not causing emergence issues or burning issues. With the turn compensation and the individual nozzle control, we see about 2 to 5% chemical savings. Not as big in numbers as we see, like if you take and go to section control on a planter and point rows, and a guy never had it. Part of that's because there's a lot of different variables with ExactApply, just boom width, operator speed, how many passes are you doing in the field. The more passes a customer makes, multiply those savings over time, and that's not really even including just the quality of job, the increased accuracy on acres, and then also being able to control the flow of the product from the nozzle body down to the plant or down to the ground more accurately. which is where the pulse width modulation, or that last bullet point, comes in. That we're able to pulse that nozzle body, which holds pressure back in the boom, and then allows it to come out in spurts. So that's going to help keep a much better fan pattern on our nozzles, and then also allow our nozzles to pulse faster or slower to maintain that droplet size and maintain the flow that we're ultimately looking for. And we can vary that based on wind conditions, the chemicals we're using, our ground speed, and a lot of other things, which is really, really cool what this system can do. So a couple quick animations looking at each one of these examples before we get into kind of the nozzle body anatomy. So first off, the auto select AB. So again, like I mentioned, the auto select AB is going to allow the sprayer to select one nozzle versus another. So we'll see it here. We're running the yellow nozzle. We get to 8 miles per hour. The sprayer detected that we're moving faster. Our pressure may have got up to 60 psi. Switches to the second one. And here, the industry exclusive bit, we get to a higher flow rate. We can kick both these nozzles on at the exact same time. So think about your guys that are applying pre-emerge fertilizers or chemicals where they're restricted use. So for instance, if we've got a label that doesn't let us use a tip that we can pulse with, so most air inducted tips, for instance, we're not allowed to pulse them. Running an auto select system allows us to keep our pressure down, but still spray conventionally, which is one of the nice things about ExactApply, that we can pulse, or we can shut the pulsing off, run just kind of conventional spraying, and kind of use it either way. The next feature we talked about was turn compensation. So nothing different here, just allowing you to kind of see the animation. As we go through the turn, the inside flow rate decreases, the outside will increase. And then couple that, again, if you take a tighter turn than that, if the nozzle bodies overlap where they've just applied, that we can actually shut those nozzles off using section control automatically, which is what we look at here in the next example. So the individual nozzle control, if you think about a 120-foot boom that's 15-inch spacing, that has 96 nozzle bodies on it. So 96 individual sections, which again can lead to that 2 to 5% chemical savings. If I do 2 to 3 passes per year, and if I run a chemical program that's $40,000-$50,000 a year, that can add up very, very quickly. So the individual nozzle control is something that's pretty outstanding, and that just increases with more point rows, more waterways, and things like that. Okay, then when we talk about the PWM side, this one gets a little bit more complicated to describe, just because it is fairly new when we talk about spraying out nozzle bodies. It's going to use similar technology we've seen in other applications, any PWM type of application, but what we do is we have a couple different operating modes, and that's going to tell the nozzle bodies how to react. So the modes of operation that we have are the combined mode or separated mode. Now, combined mode there, if you look on kind of that top section here, combined mode is going to take flow from 2 solenoids. So ExactApply has 2 solenoids on it that we'll look at here in a second, an A and a B. So flow comes from our solution line into the nozzle body. It gets directed into the A and B solenoids. When we run combined mode, those solenoids are going to direct flow from both sides, the A and the B, and direct it towards an individual nozzle. So flow out of both pulsers coming out of one nozzle body. Each of those solenoids is able to pulse at 15 times per second. Now, when we use both of them together, they are going to be opposed from each other, so they're not going to apply at the same time. That's going to allow us to apply up to 30 times per second, which is the fastest in the industry by about 10 times a second. So a really good advantage we have there. Where that comes into play is the faster I operate my machine. So if I'm applying at 20 miles per hour, there is a chance at lower pulse rates that we may checkerboard the field, meaning that there might be a spot when that pulsar is off where we pass over ground that doesn't get a full burst of application. The faster we can pulse, the less that checkerboarding effect could potentially happen. Now, we don't see it a lot. Higher rates, higher speeds, it can become pronounced. But with Deere's ExactApply, we really have not noticed many issues unless it was a setup problem where customers using nozzles that weren't configured correctly and so forth. When we do the combined mode, so there's 6 nozzle positions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Combined mode has to have position 4, 5, or 6 on the front edge. So the leading edge of the sprayer boom has to have the 4, 5, or 6 position in front. So it's just how the plumbing is inside the nozzle body that it directs the flow from both those pulsers to that one side. We can also run in separated mode. So separated mode takes those 2 pulsers and lets them direct flow from one spot to another. So again, we've got 6 nozzle bodies. When we change turret position, we manually have to go and turn that nozzle body. So there's no motor in it that automatically turns them, but by using separated mode, there's a lot of ways we can configure our machines that really allow it to take advantage of 2 different sets of nozzles. So for guys in corn and soybean country, a lot of times we use different tips between corn herbicides and soybean herbicides, partially because of rates and things like that. So I can have 1 nozzle set up for corn, and I can have 1 set up for beans. And it could be, the same situation for guys in small grains too, just depending on, what a guy has on his operation. But wide swings in application rates, if I can meet my target rate by using 1 nozzle, then in the cab I can just manually switch from one to another. It saves a lot of time switching nozzle bodies over, maintains a high level of accuracy that you switch them all at one time, and you don't have to worry about accidentally missing one or one didn't get quite in the right position. So when we do separated mode, nozzle position 1, 2, or 3 has to be in the front. So here, nozzle position 1's in the front. The A solenoid is going to direct flow to basically that front option, and the B is going to send flow to 4, 5, or 6, is really how that's plumbed. And when we have it in separated mode, we can run both nozzles at the same time. So if I have the same size nozzle in, say, 1 and position 4 like I have here, one nozzle is going to be spraying while the other's off. And as that's pulsing 15 times per second, more times than not, or most of the time, one of those nozzles will always be spraying, which, at least in my experience, we've had really good luck putting our 3D nozzles on and really operating both of those to get a high pitch or high angle of attack on that spray when it hits the ground or the crop. And then it also just helps it penetrate by always having flow to one of the nozzle bodies, which, again, we're going to talk in more detail over a couple of classes, but just want to kind of introduce that concept if you haven't been familiar with it. So one of the questions I've gotten is pulsing in auto select. So if you remember the auto select, being able to have the sprayer automatically select which nozzle to use, and that's correct. It's only spraying conventionally today that auto select will work. And last I heard, Deere is working on having an auto select option while pulsing, but today our software does not allow it. If they do come with it, it'll be a software update. It won't be a complete machine rework. Okay, so combined mode. A little more detail here as far as some of the features that we can operate. So combined mode, I've talked about a few of these, but again, the A and the B pulse are going to be coming out 1 nozzle, which allows us to pulse at 30 hertz. We get turn compensation, the individual nozzle control or section control. They also have a feature called boost. So boost allows me to put a higher flow rate out selected nozzle bodies if I want. So think about applying a higher rate directly behind the wheels to help penetrate through any dust that might be getting kicked up by the wheels, or possibly on the outside couple nozzle bodies to put a higher rate in fence lines where at least at home, like we've got ragweed problems. So I might want to make sure I get a little higher dose out there just to make sure I get maximum penetration and coverage. We also can run pulsing off, meaning that it'll be a conventional sprayer at that point. And when we spray conventionally, a sprayer that comes from the factory with ExactApply does not have any section valves. So the only way that we can shut sections off is through the nozzle body. So if I spray conventionally, the nozzle body acts as my section control valve. So I would still have nozzle by nozzle shutoff even when spraying conventionally, which when we look at our most competitive machines, that is not the case without totally switching modes and reconfiguring the system and the monitor. Okay, separated mode, just a few more things here. Individual nozzle pulsing. So only one nozzle is pulsing at a time. We can have them, in this case, we'd be running A or B. So 15 hertz would be the maximum that we could run those at. We do get turn compensation, the individual nozzle control or section control. Boost is an option here as well. And then manual nozzle switching. That's basically the push button switching from the A nozzle to the B nozzle from the armrest, which we'll talk about that again in future classes where the buttons are and so forth. We can get A plus B pulsing, which basically is using the A nozzle and the B nozzle at the same time. So both solenoids are pulsing, but out of separate nozzles, which gives us the 30 hertz pulse total option. So we get that turn compensation boost and the individual nozzle control, just like the other modes. Then also when we are in separated mode, we can run in auto select, which again would be conventional spraying at this point, no ExactApply, or no pulsing, I should say. That does give us individual nozzle on off, automatic nozzle switching, and we can, when we're in auto select, we can manually select which nozzle we want to use as well. And there is a little bit of math and finesse to selecting nozzles with the auto select. And again, we'll get into that in some future classes as it gets a little bit more advanced, just depending on what a customer might be applying with. All right, let's kind of back up and take a look at some nozzle body anatomy. So there are a couple things here to kind of make a note of. First off, the way this nozzle is positioned is how it would be if the sprayer was traveling forward. Okay, so the nozzle position 4 is in the back. 1 would be in the front position right now. Our A solenoid will always be on the left-hand side, and the B solenoid will always be on the right-hand side. If the nozzle body is off of the machine and you're bench programming it, or a customer dug them in the dirt and you need to do some repairs on it, the way to tell is the electrical connector comes in and is always on the back side. So the back side here, with that kind of pointed towards you, will be A on the left and B on the right. So there are hair clips here, and I'll actually break a nozzle body apart here in a minute to kind of show you the different components. If you've got questions, feel free to unmute and ask, or type them in the chat, just in terms of different components that we can look at. So when we kind of turn the nozzle upside down here, you'll see there are positions for the 6 individual nozzles. You don't have to have 6 nozzles on when you're out running. The system just essentially has to have 1 on in order to spray, as long as you're only applying out of that 1 nozzle port. We have positions for 6. A lot of our customers don't need 6 at the same time. So if I only have 2, 3, maybe 4 nozzles that I'm using, we do have the option of putting caps on here. They run for about $1 a piece. So we can cap the additional ones as well. Factory machines in 2021 are supposed to be coming with caps on already. I have not verified that, so if anybody does know that for a fact, let me know. But last I heard, they were supposed to be shipping with the caps on. Bottom side has an integrated LED light here as well, which allows for great nighttime spray conditions. Even during the day, that light can be on, and it just shows you, as you're sitting in the cab, just allows you to see a little bit of spray pattern out of each individual nozzle, and it makes it easier to see if there's any blockage issues, which also when you're pulsing them, just having something change when you're sitting in the sprayer just helps you verify that something's working correctly, which is what's really nice about having that LED light underneath of there. There are a couple different modes for that. You can have it turned off, so if you don't want the light on, you can shut them off. You can have it on all the time. You can have it on when the nozzle body is on, or you can have it strobe when the nozzle body is pulsing. So a couple different modes there as well. The other part that's nice about the light is if there's solenoid blockage issues, I should say solenoid issues like a stuck poppet, that you can tell the machine to light up or strobe the affected nozzle. So if I get out of the cab and I can't remember what nozzle it was, or I don't want to count to nozzle number 53, it'll actually sit there and pulse the light. So you can walk directly to the nozzle that's having the issue, clean it out, or do whatever repairs we need, and then get going. Again, just pointing out the A nozzle, our A solenoid, and the B solenoid here as well, which again just gives a good look at kind of what we're able to see there. Okay, I'm gonna stop presenting here and show a camera. If you guys can't see those nozzle bodies, let me know. But again, want to just give you a real quick look here at kind of breaking down a nozzle body. So I've got two nozzle bodies here. These are older style ones, and there's a way to tell model year 17 up through model year 20 pretty easily. And we can see that by looking on the kind of the bottom parts here. The John Deere emblem is going to be stamped in white. The newer ones, which there's a change in the anti-resistance cap, are going to basically be a stamped embossed type of John Deere logo. So if it's white, it's basically model year 20 or older. If it's a stamped one, it's going to be model year 21 or newer, which will be important as far as part stocking, some things that we'll want to make sure we kind of look at there. Okay, so on my nozzle body, if we kind of look at the different pieces to break it down, first off, we've got two hair clips. I'm going to go ahead and remove one side. So again, it's the A side and the B side. I'm going to go ahead and remove that hair clip. I can pull off the magnet. So this is what's doing kind of the pushing, pulling part. So it's an electromagnet, and that is, there's no other moving components in there. So it's essentially where that stem goes, and then the electrical connector. So the electrical connector part, just important to note there that the factory does send them with dielectric grease. When we're doing maintenance on them, especially out in the field, we want to make sure we recoat and have a good application so we don't let any corrosion get to these pins, because this is not serviceable. It's all a part of the main body. Okay, then we've got this stem inside here. I'm going to go ahead and just takes a little bit of wiggling, especially when it's dry like this. And that just pulls straight out. It's not threaded or anything like that. Inside, it's just plastic inside of there. So nothing else really to talk about other than looking to make sure there's no obstructions. Now, where I might do something like this, pull it apart, is if I go out and I run the sprayer and I shut it off and I see nozzles that are leaking. This is a kind of a good indication that inside one of these poppets that there might be a piece of debris that's stuck and not letting the poppet close all the way to create a nice seal. So I check in there just to make sure there's no flakes of anything. And then the rest of the magic kind of happens inside of this stem. Now this stem is threaded, so this black cap can come off, and you'll notice there's an O-ring on the tip, O-ring on the kind of the outside leading edge, and then there's an O-ring on the back side here as well. So when we talk about wear pieces, O-rings are definitely on the list of things that can get worn. And then if I unscrew this black part, this does come off and kind of have interior components. There is one more green O-ring on the inside here that we do want to make sure. This one can, especially if I've been in there and I've worked on it before, it can come loose and get pinched or kind of torn a little bit. This one can cause leaking, at least in my experience, a little more than the rest. So for the meantime, we'll go ahead and set that aside. And the rest is going to be inside of this stem. So inside of this stem, especially if you're out in the field, be really careful because there are parts that will fall out in here. So if I kind of tip that upside down, inside that you're going to see there's just a hollow compartment. So if we've got water that has small pieces of gravel or grime or sand in it, that can cause scoring on the inside of this stem, which can cause some issues with our poppet or our shuttle in here. So it's really good when you pull this apart just to take a look in there, see if you see any scoring or anything like that. Okay, I'm going to set that aside for now, and we'll look at the last piece. So here's the poppet. Get my position right here. So here's the poppet inside. This goes back and forth, and it sits on a small metal spring. So again, obviously with that moving, they are considered wear parts. Wear life, again, because sprayers get used different amounts in different operations, it's really hard to say how many hours. So far, we've not had to do full replacements unless a customer had really, really bad water or didn't do proper flushing procedures frequently enough. So another thing you can look at here is look for any kind of scoring on this if it's a used machine. And then on the very top here as well, just to see if there's been any flaking on the top cap. And that just kind of is a good indication usually if the machine was kind of properly cared for, properly winterized, and so forth. To reassemble, I'm just going to take my spring and push, just set that in there. It just rests in there nice. And then I take my stem, and I'm just going to marry the two back up together. So just to give an illustration, when that electromagnet operates, this little shuttle in here, you're just going to move in and out. Okay, and that's what's causing our pulsing. It's doing that up to 15 times per second, and that is going to be what causes the pulsing on our nozzle bodies. Okay, again, I go to reassemble. Make sure all of your O-rings are nice and seated. They do have tendency to float out just a little bit, especially if they're damp. This nozzle body's dry, so I don't have that issue. A lot of times when you take this cap off, that inside O-ring will be sitting inside the stem, so just be aware of that. Now there is a torque spec on this piece as well. There's a tool that comes with all new sprayers, and it is orderable. That's just a torque wrench, but I believe it's I should have looked it up before we started, but like a 15 or 13 millimeter socket does fit over top of this, and that's all they use. They use a T-handle torque wrench. Now, a lot of things that I tend to do tend to be out in the field. So there is actually a kind of a special tool. You can put this in a metal plate so you can torque on this properly. The other thing that's nice, again, if you're out in the field, the backside of the magnet is notched, so I can take my stem and kind of seat it in there and use that as kind of my holder. Now they still recommend a torque really finger tight. Don't don't grunt when you're trying to seal it up. But that really is how those kind of go together. Okay, we go ahead and seat that back in there. Go ahead and put my magnet back on, making sure that I am lined up properly, and then we can put the hairpin back in place, and that's the assembly for that side of the nozzle body. Now again, that's the right side. The B side, we also do have the same exact setup on the A side as well. Other O-ring, there is one where the nozzle body meets the boom plumbing. It is a high flow design, so it is the larger opening style. And if you do take nozzle bodies off, these do get pinched relatively easily, so just be aware of that. If you've got a lot of ExactApply sprayers in your area, make sure your parts guys have those on hand. Again, O-rings are relatively inexpensive, but these are a little bit more unique because of how they sit flexed inside of that housing. Okay, on the bottom side, not much more to talk about here that we haven't covered. Again, there's the 6 nozzle positions, the LED light. On the 2020 to 2017 nozzle bodies, they do have a clip down here that I can pull off and actually remove this entire bottom assembly portion. That is not an option on the model year 21 and newer. That is because of the moisture issues we've had, especially guys out west with the LED light cracking. They made improvements to the light, and they've also improved the laser welding inside to really minimize chances of getting moisture inside of there. Hey, so I've got one here that it's just a good example of if you don't properly winterize, it's not supposed to have the circuit board showing. That actually ended up staying inside of this part. What happened was sprayer didn't get winterized properly all the way out to the booms, or all the way out to the ends of the boom tips. So moisture got inside of here, and it just expanded and cracked the cap off. Once this cap comes off, it is not fixable anymore. And it just give you a little better look there, just so you can see what's inside. But nothing we can do about that to salvage it. Okay, and when we talk about winterizing, it's important to note that because we've got the A and the B nozzle ports, that we've got basically fluid from here where it enters, sitting inside of the solenoid out to essentially right here if it doesn't drain out. So when we have the shops go through and do the winterizing procedures, it's very important to run both the A and the B nozzle, even if there's no nozzle on it, but just to make sure we've got antifreeze or winterizer fluid coming out, that if I only do one side, I could still have an issue. So ExactApply sprayers, it's really important to properly winterize, and spending a little more money on winterizer fluid is really worthwhile from my experience. This nozzle body came off of one that did not get winterized at one of our stores. We ended up paying for 17 nozzle bodies to repair it for a customer, because it was basically our mistake. So just be aware of that. It can creep up and cause issues. I am working on a winterizing video, but John Deere also does have a good one out on YouTube that we can look at. Now, with all these O-rings in here, there's two large ones that kind of go with that, along with the O-rings inside of the individual kind of pulsar portions or the solenoids. There's $29.51 at retail dollars worth of O-rings in each individual nozzle body. So if we look at needing to rebuild them, what it would take of parts. Now, there's obviously a labor side of that to be considered, but just want to make sure you all are kind of aware of that. Okay, a couple last things here before we wrap up and let you go. So back on the PowerPoint slides here again. So I did get a question on will the boom drain if I pull these solenoids out? And the answer is yes. The boom is pressurized right up until this point. So great point. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff. We do need to make sure that we have purged all the pressure out before we pull any of these off. Otherwise, you will get a face full of chemical, water, antifreeze, whatever's in the boom. So the process for kind of draining that out is if you shut the solution pump off and then turn the master switch on the hydro handle, that will run the nozzles for 2 to 3 seconds. And you do that cycle 2 to 3 times, and just watch the pressure gauge, make sure it gets down to 0 or 1 psi, and then you can safely remove these pieces without having any issue. So appreciate you bringing that up. So back on the PowerPoint here, just for a couple last notes. The LED lights, when we have them at night, just want to give you a look of kind of how that all looks. So it gives a lot of visibility to the operator, especially at night. And again, these can be strobed or on directly, but does make it really easy to see the job that you're doing while you're out in the field, if you're operating at night, doing pre-emerges and things like that. Now, we talk about compatibility. We can get this from the factory on booms 90 up to 132 foot, steel and carbon fiber, available across the 4 series sprayer lineup. So 4023, 4030, 4038, 4044, 4045, and the 4060. Not currently any kits available for Hagie sprayers, but keep your eyes peeled. I anticipate that we'll be seeing some changes of that here in the next year or so. We do have an LPB machine that will be coming from Hagie for model year 22 that may or may not have that kit on it, but they're redesigning a few things to have that ability in the near future. So not trying to hold back any information. I legitimately don't know if they will have it on that LPB, but it is planned that new form will have that option on it. So we get that machine in March, and I'll be communicating out a little more information, showing some pictures of what we can kind of expect down the road. Also available 15 or 20-inch boom spacing, 2630 or a Gen 4 monitor. Not compatible on the 30 series sprayers. So the Gen 4 monitors would be in like an R4038 model year 14 or 15, for instance. Receivers, SF3000 or SF6000 are both compatible. We do have performance upgrade kits available. So if we've got a machine on the ground, a 4 series sprayer, that's 2014 or newer. We do have kits that are available to retrofit or do a performance upgrade to add ExactApply onto them. Steel and carbon fiber booms, 90 up through 132-foot booms as well. One caveat there is you have to have stainless steel plumbing. Just kind of recognize that. I think there's only one 4023 on our territory that I'm aware of. A 4023 sprayer, it's a different form factor. You can get ExactApply from the factory, but there's not a retrofit kit if you end up dealing with anybody that happens to have that machine. Okay, a couple resources. I mentioned this here as I was talking, that they updated some cartridge things here in model year 2020. The assembly numbers for the nozzle body have changed. Now, this is important because the software version that comes on sprayers, there's a software bundle loaded into each one of these nozzle bodies, and they all have to match each other. And we can program them. If I have a tech plug in a service advisor, I can program the nozzle bodies, but I have to program every single one, and it can take a couple hours. We do have bench upgrade kits that are available. I know some of our stores have recently been buying those to have them. But you can plug Service Advisor in and update up to 3 nozzle bodies at a time. So again, it's just important to know what version of software they came with. So if you've got AKK 27552 nozzle bodies on your parts shelves, they have older software in them. If the sprayer is newer than that, they will have to be updated before you can do any swapping without having, software mismatch issues. So just be aware of that. And then the other updates we talked about with that updated laser weld assembly and the non-serviceable kind of bottom part that we talked about there. A couple of last resources. Deere does have walk-around guides. There is demo material available for ExactApply. Nozzle selection is absolutely crucial when we have ExactApply sprayers. So I want to make sure I don't walk past that part. We'll cover that in a future session. But selecting nozzles for these sprayers is really important because we have a lot of questions we need to ask our customers in terms of how fast are they operating, what types of chemicals are they applying, because some are restricted use. Then obviously the regular questions we ask with nozzles, rates and speeds that they kind of typically run. And then when we get into the auto select options, there are even more configurations we need to consider so that the nozzle bodies aren't trying to make too much of a jump in between switching, and then also to make sure the two nozzles are compatible with each other. So last thing I want to mention, just kind of reiterating, the nozzle selection is key. If you have a customer that has ExactApply and they don't have nozzles yet, we should start that conversation soon, just to make sure we have time to get them on and we can put them on at the shop during PDI. So if you have questions about nozzle selection or what to put on, feel free to reach out to me. There are a couple others in the organization that are confident with it as well. So if you got a guy in your store, by all means, talk to them. We also do have reps from Hypro. So Rex Guthlin covers Minnesota and South Dakota. Scott Shellhorn covers our Iowa stores. And then Mike Perry is our guy out west. So these guys will answer any questions you've got about ExactApply, selecting nozzles for ExactApply or conventional spraying, and they all do a really nice job. So lots of options there. We do have a few demo sprayers that are on the ground as well this year. And so if you do have any opportunities to demo machines, by all means, feel free to bring me in. We can line something up. If you want me on the ground, we can certainly schedule something out. And that goes for you guys out west too. Want to make sure that you're good and confident and comfortable with these machines. Don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but in model year 21, we have sold over twice the amount of sprayers we sold in 2020. And in 2020, we sold about double the sprayers we sold in 2019. So we have a really big market here and have made a lot of gains. So appreciate everyone's efforts in that space, and do want to make sure that I can help you, or the whole company can help support all of your efforts getting these machines out, making sure customers are very comfortable. That will wrap us up for today. I apologize going a little long. We will be talking about kind of the setup and operation side of ExactApply next week, and getting into the monitor a little bit more for configuration. And then we'll be kind of doing a couple other topics in and amongst the other ExactApply ones before seeding and application season starts. So with that, if you guys have questions, feel free to unmute or text me or send them in the messenger. Otherwise, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and we'll catch you next week.